Hi, my name's Benji and welcome to Dice vs Cards. Today we're looking at Century Golem Edition, a 2 to 5 player competitive card drafting game because you need to pick the right cards representing merchants to allow you to do your thing. And hand management because you then need to take those cards and make the most efficient use of them to gain the crystals you need to then apply the set collection elements to this game because you need the right crystals for the right objectives in order for you to gain points. So you're set in a world where crystals spawn golems and we worship the golems and we love the golems, and the artwork and everything that goes with it represents that theme very, very well. So let's see how this plays and whether this could be the next game for you. So the object of the game is to be the player with the most points. Once one player has got a certain amount of objectives, then you keep playing until everyone's had the same amount of turns. So you're going to start with these 2 starter cards here that are going to allow you to start generating resources here in the form of crystals throughout the game. So to set up, will look something like this in that you've got an objectives or golem row here, and these are the cards that we're looking to cash in crystals for to gain these points. And then a merchant row at the bottom, so there's always one more merchant card than there is golem card, and these merchant cards are going to allow us to do certain things with our crystals throughout. So you'll also see there are silver coins here and copper coins that are up for grabs when you gain these N2 golems in the row, and any time cards that are taken either from the merchant or the golem row, they'll then be replaced by the next card of the respective deck, and therefore all the others will be pushed up to the end, and that will become more clear why that's the case as we go through this overview. So each player on their turn is going to be taking an action, then passing to the player to their left. And each player is going to start with their own caravan card and a number of yellow crystals depending on where they are in the turn order and dependent on the player count. So these crystals are also in this order because the yellow crystals are worth the least, and as we go up all the way to these pink crystals, these are worth the most and will ultimately give you the most points. So the actions you can take are fairly straightforward. You can play a card from your hand, and remember we started with these 2 cards, and these represent 2 of the types of merchant cards that we're going to come across as well throughout. So here, this card, when you play it, it's just simply going to generate you 2 yellow crystals. And then this one here represents the ability to upgrade your crystals. So here you've effectively got 2 upgrade points that will allow you to, for example, upgrade 1 crystal 2 places for 1 blue crystal. So you swap out the yellow for the blue, or alternatively you could take 2 of your yellow crystals and just upgrade them once each, so that you've then got 2 green crystals. So there is a third action you can take when you play a card from your hand, but all of those cards are found in the merchant row. So that brings us to the second action, which is that you can take one of these merchant cards, but only one of them is free. But in this example, if I wanted this card, I'd need to place a crystal here and a crystal there to take that card. So going back to that third action you can take by playing a card from your hand, you'll see a lot of these cards have some crystals with then a down arrow, and that basically means you can swap out that type of crystal. So here you could swap out 1 pink crystal for a blue and 3 yellow crystals, and you can do that as many times as you want with that one action. So if you had 2 pink crystals in that example, you could do that transmutation or that trade twice. So once you've started to play a bunch of cards from your hand, you can't use them again until you do the third action that you can take, which is to rest. And rest simply means you grab all of the cards that you played face down on the table and you get them back to your hand for use on future turns. And then finally, the last action you can take, the most important one, is to claim. And this is where you're going to be getting objectives and objective points. So as I'm sure you guess from the card art here, you simply need to trade the colour and number of crystals found at the bottom of these golem cards to trade in to take those cards that are worth that many points at the end of the game. The play's going to rinse and repeat like that until one player has got a certain number of objectives, and every time you gain an objective you place it face down to keep that information secret. And as I mentioned at the start, once that happens, each player will then need to ensure that they've had the same amount of turns as each other, and then you go to end round scoring. And as you'd expect, you're going to be getting the number of points you've gained from objectives and from any coins you've got, and then any non-yellow crystals that remain in your caravan at the end of the game are also worth 1 point each. So that's an overview of how this game plays. What did I think of it? So who is this for? Well, it's a lightweight game, and if you like buying, selling and trading commodities in order to gain success, then there's probably something here for you. Perhaps you like crystals and the idea that crystals can be sculpted into these big golems. You've got golem lighthouses, golem farmers, golem bridges even, all contained within this box. So this is actually a reskin of Century Spice Road, and it's pretty much identical mechanically. So you might want to consider this if you like Splendor, published by Space Cowboys, or Res Arcana, published by Sandcastle Games. So in many people's opinion, this and Century Spice Road is actually the natural successor to Splendor. So if you like that, you're absolutely going to enjoy this. And Res Arcana just adds that little bit more complexity to proceedings, but still has that same vibe of upgrading your resources, trading them in as you go. In terms of gameplay, well, there's two words that spring to mind immediately when I think about playing this game, and that's smooth and fluid, because everything just feels organic. It was absolutely super easy to learn and get to the table, and then once you do get going, there's literally no need to refer to the rulebook. Now don't get me wrong, there's part of being a lightweight game, but there's always something that needs to be either errated or FAQ'd or needs to be resolved with input from the designer, and that's just not necessary here because, like I've said, everything just flows and has its place, and that's a great reason why I love this game. So not everything's perfect, it's fast paced, but I also suspect it probably is better in that sweet spot of 3 to 4 players. 5 players is no problem as well because it is a fast game, but there's always a sweet spot. And the main reason for that for me is that merchant row. It really needs some turnover because if you have a bad draw of cards, you're really going to struggle to move those merchant cards on. And that becomes then stagnant with you just dealing with what you've got in your hand. So the fact there's only 3 actions you can take actually isn't that limiting, because as long as you've got those different cards, like I've said, from the merchant rows, then there's always something for you to do. You know, whether it be in just gaining resources, resting to bide your time and then get all the cards you need back to your hand, upgrading your crystals, or just trading. But figuring out how you need to get to the most points possible is always a nice treat because it's not overly burdensome, it's not overly complex to get there, it's just straightforward, simple fun. So as I've mentioned, the merchant row isn't perfect. Perhaps they could have fed it from the middle so that each end of the row is a freebie. Maybe there was a slightly different way to do that, but as I do with all great games, that's very much a nitpick because the overall gameplay experience is just top notch. Then we move to the look and feel and theme of the game, and I managed to steer clear of gushing about how good this game looks because it really is an absolute treat to observe all of the art, especially on the golems on the scoring point objectives. They all represent the crystals that you need to spend and have just their own lovely flavour. So the fact that there's barely any fluff in the box or in the rules is testament to how well that theme is evoked through the components themselves. I cannot say enough good things about the artwork style and the component quality. The crystals are absolutely fantastic and just absolutely pop. You know, I don't know how they could have done a better job in terms of overall production quality here. So with all that being said, Dice vs Card is going to give a final score of 9 out of 10. I really do rate this game. Yes, it's got some very minor limitations, but any time a game is this smooth and this fluid, I'm going to be shouting about it from the rooftops. So that's it from me. I'll see you next time.
In Jewish folklore, a golem is an animated anthropomorphic being that is created entirely from inanimate matter. It was that or you got my Golem from Lord of the Rings impression. I think you lucked out.